everybody. We're back.
Hello.
Greg Everett, Ursula Garza, your two favorite casters of pods on the Olympics board of weightlifting.
Amateur podcasters, casters of pods.
That's what a podcaster is. A podcaster is one who casts pods. It's right there in the word. Okay, healthiq.com/catalyst, guys. If you need life insurance, or if you have life insurance and you're not particularly fond of the rate you're paying, go to healthiq.com/catalyst and you can get we're pretty confident you can get a lower rate for the same kind of thing. So you might as well save a bit of money before you die.
I would be curious about finding the one person who's fond of the rate.
I don't think you will, but you could be fonder of a lower rate.
Or less mad?
Less irate.
Yeah.
Be slightly less irate about your rates for life insurance.
Yes.
How about that? There's your new slogan, Health IQ. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Ursula.
For free. Yeah.
Let's hear all about the Art of Coaching Weightlifting seminar.
It was awesome.
It was awesome. The end.
Yeah. I mean, let me say. And you could ask some people, and
people just
particularly,
love me, and
yeah, I did a fucking phenomenal job, and I changed it up a little bit because so the first night we did a couple of hours. It went a little long. We did lecture and just kind of discussed the basic biomechanics of lifting. I channeled my inner Sean Waxman, and then Garhammer. No, I can say something, but I didn't. And then on the next day we started doing a lot of intro type stuff and covering teaching beginners and all of that. And then the next day we did more intermediate and advanced work, but. And we did a coaching observation piece, so that was good as well. And then I left it more. I only had 10 people, so it was a small group. I've done them as big as like 20, 15 is usually what I shoot for in terms of size. But it was a smaller group, and I really, really, really liked it because it felt more like a real seminar. Like it was just far more interactive. It had a lot of one-on-one time with people. I felt like, and there was a lot of questions. So they were like super inquisitive, and there was just a lot of discussion, and it was easier to handle. Like I didn't make a really hard timeline for what we were going to cover. And so it just like the flow was really, really natural. So like by the time we got to the end of it, a lot of the stuff that I had to discuss, we had already covered. The questions had come up. So the questions that I wrote the course to answer had already come up. So I kind of preemptively answer them in the course because I think these are the questions that I had as a developing coach, and that's what the premise of the course is. As a developing coach, what questions did I have that I wanted answers that I didn't get answers to? So like all of the things that I wanted to know as I was developing as a coach, that the information, of course a lot less information was out there, but what were the answers that I sought and the sources of the information that I used to get those answers? And I put that together. There's a lot of intro courses out there, so I try to fill in the gaps and fuse all of the information, like draw lines between all of that information and why is there differing information and like why one person teaches it another way and another person teaches it a different way and where the common ground is and why they differ. Difference between mechanics and technique and why different lifters use different techniques and all of the questions that people have that don't really get answered in beginner courses or intro courses. And by the time we got to the end of the course, like a bunch of the questions, particularly on programming that I normally introduce, I lost you.
I'm right here. I'm right here with you.
My screen shifted and I was like, shit. They were already answered. It was kind of weird. Like they had preemptively asked a lot of the questions that we were gonna that were part of the presentation normally. So that was kind of cool. And I actually had several people show up from different states and had heard about the course from the podcast. And we had several of the people in the course that listened to the podcast. So I had them write their name down. I told them I'd give them a shout out. Jessie, and I didn't ever ask her how she pronounced her last name. Oehler. How would you pronounce that? Oehler?
Oehler. Yeah, I'd probably start with Oehler and work from there.
Okay. Jessie Oehler, and she put a little smiley face. She was a lot of fun to work with. Jamie Blackburn. Zachary Thornton needs a course in penmanship. Matt Miranda, Rob Ronan, who's actually here in Austin, Mike Casales, and then Robert and Aaron Drake, who owned the Weight Room USA.
I know them.
Yeah, you do know them. And I think Robert's taken your course like twice, maybe. I guess you didn't teach well the first time, or he wanted to learn more.
It was probably just terrible the first time.
I think I was at one of them. It was probably the one that was bad. No. And he put Aaron wrote down the podcast with Ursula and that other guy. That would be you. But I'm not a guy, so I'm not sure about that, Aaron. So yeah, those were all people, and they listen. And so I wanted to say hey to all of them and thank them for coming, thank them for listening. And there are other ways to get information to this podcast. I know everything is filtered through Greg, but I've got I'm 50% of the podcast people. So
why you make
it
sound like I have some nefarious plot to like block shit from you?
Yeah, he does. No,
Get out of here.
But it.
You're entirely welcome to do all the administrative work on this thing.
I don't want to do shit.
I will not resist.
This would not. Everybody knows. Obviously, this would not be happening without Greg.
Exactly.
I basically wrangled Greg into doing all the work for it. I'm like, hey, Greg, let's have a podcast. He's like, no. Okay, fine. Okay, Greg, do all the work for you. He's like, fuck, this is what I feared.
Yep.
Exactly what happened. But yeah, and then there's another guy that sent in a message that I wanted to say hi to. His name, I don't know how to say this last name either. It's amazing. I'm a college teacher and I still stumble through names. Roman Garansway. He also took your seminar, Greg.
Nice.
He did the Catalyst Level 1 seminar. He said he took it in Richmond. And he said he had a brace on his knee, a robotic knee brace.
Robotic knee brace. That sounds like something I would point out.
Yeah, that's what you did. And he had an incredibly catastrophic car accident that should have left him dead. And he survived and went through an incredibly long ordeal of recovery. But he's back. Thought he would never walk again, but is lifting and back at it at Hybrid Beach CrossFit and in Chesapeake, Virginia. And wanted to give him a shout out as well.
What a badass.
And tell really has overcome an incredibly difficult journey in recovery and gained an entirely new perspective.
And then some of you are complaining about tearing calluses. Get to work.
Right. Yeah. No, really. I was telling Greg that before, because I was a little bit late for the podcast, and then we had some problems getting the recording part going. I know. Shut up, Greg. And
so uncharacteristic of you.
I know. Hush, all of you. I'll tell you what's funny, Greg. Though, like I have turned over this new leaf, and I've started waking up earlier, even if I go to bed really late. And I've been waking up earlier most days. And what is really weird about that whole thing is that I'm fucking still late for shit. I'm like, how is this happening? Like I end up just getting more work done.
Let's just say it.
I have a major time management issue. I'm like, okay, and so I start working, and then I still end up late for shit. I'm like, what the fuck? It's some inherent clock issue I have. Like I wake up at 7, and I don't have class till noon. And then I'm still late. Like, what happened? So I'm just going to start sleeping in again. But in any case, I talked to Care Heads this morning for quite a bit. I talked to Chad. I talk to Phil a lot because we're taking care of a lot of stuff for Worlds, or he is, and I'm just being bossy. No, he asked me for a bunch of things. I actually do shit too, but I mean, nowhere like, a drop in the bucket. He just like asked me for different things, and I'm like, okay, when he needs stuff. Or I just give him more shit to do, which is what ends up happening at the end. What else did I tell you I talked to? I was talking to Derek when I was, and he was kind of waiting for me to finish that conversation.
Always waiting for you. That's my life.
Robin this morning as well. My best friend, Robin Birdgoat.
You're doing a lot of name dropping on this episode there, Ursula.
It's not name dropping. Those are my friends.
We get it.
It's only name dropping you.
We get it.
So I was busy this morning, and I ended up. I was that was all work stuff.
I don't know if you guys know this, but I'm really good friends with a lot of really good weightlifters. I talk to them on the phone all the time.
That's what weightlifting life is.
Oh, boy.
It's a really tough life.
Yeah.
It's really tough.
Okay, well, tell everybody about your little chat on Thursday.
My puppy dog, Mark.
Before Americans.
Well, because no one's probably going to be there.
Well, not with that attitude. Sell it, Ursula.
Not with this time slot. Thursday, 3:30, before anybody gets to Americans.
You're opening for the verification meeting.
Yeah, no shit. We're like the pre-fight. We're doing a presentation. If anybody cares, I'm the chair of the Women's Commission for the IWF now, and so one of the things we're looking at is like different women's issues, and internationally, like participation by women. Not so much as athletes is still, it's still a problem for athletes in some countries, in a lot of different regions in the world. But for us, that's, we're seeing like a 46-50, whatever, 54 split. We're getting closer and closer, like 48-52, I think, at some events. But in the coaching ranks, in the technical official ranks, in the political ranks, we're still seeing a huge disparity for women participation compared to men. And so, and we see that internationally as well. And so I wanted to come up with ways to try to encourage more women. And I think one of our failures is communication. I think, period, right? For both men and women. But I put together a female group to do a presentation just to try to close some of those gaps and provide information. And so we have this little cast. It's me and Kara Heads, Morgan King, and Jody Stumbo to present. I would do the political slant and getting involved, either at the LWC level, national level, and how to go about doing that. I had for the coaching perspective, how to coaching information, as well as becoming a national coach, international coach, senior national coach, and the coaching opportunities that exist in terms of the different levels. From the athlete's perspective, the different athletic opportunities would be presented by Morgan, like the different levels for youth, junior. We just got an email out. An opportunity just popped up to go to Lima, Peru. I'm sure you just got that email too. It's a real quick turnaround because we just found out. But the different opportunities for athletes to compete at different levels, from local competitions to national, international with the AO series, and just getting that kind of information out, as well as refereeing. We have a really extraordinary need for national level referees and international level referees for men and women. But of course, we're trying to encourage more female participation on all these different levels. And so we just wanted to reach out to and create lines of communication between the women that are involved and women who are interested in getting involved. And the name of the presentation was, it was just a kind of original title that was a working title, which was How to Become an Olympian, because the conversation started between Morgan and I, and it was kind of how to become an Olympian or not, because I'm the or not because my original dream was to be an Olympian. And of course that didn't pan out. So I started, I stayed involved in other ways. And I was also involved as a coach, and then was an athlete's rep, and then went on to become a member of the board of directors. And then now the executive board at the IWF. But a lot of people don't know that, originally a lot of us enter the sport and think, I want to be an Olympian. And then you go into the or not phase for most of us. And then, like, what do you do from there? Well, you don't just walk away from the sport. Hopefully you stay involved. And there are a whole lot of other routes to take. I never did the technical official side, but that's a side that sorely needs participation by women. And so do the coaching ranks. And so, the idea is to encourage and inform women about all of the different opportunities and areas that we need women participation, and hopefully encourage and inspire women to get involved in different areas that they're not already involved, or understanding that you can jump around and be involved in 2 or 3 areas. You don't have to confine yourself to one. So it's called How to Become an Olympian or Not, but somehow the email or the information on it just says How to Become an Olympian. I couldn't tell you, because so far my attempts as an athlete and in coaching another woman to become an Olympian, she was an Olympic team alternate, it was Jody, have ultimately failed. So I'm the or not part.
Well, most of us are the or not part.
Right.
There's a hell of a lot more or nots than Olympians. Okay, yeah. Well, guys, that's Thursday from 3 to 3:30 p.m.
Oh, is that what it is? I don't even know. I was like, Greg, when is it? I don't even know. Oh.
Yeah. Oh, actually, it's after the verification meeting. So you are headlining. Yeah. They're the undercard. Okay. Let's do some questions here.
All right.
This is one we have not talked about directly, and I think it's important because this is like... Well, I'm just going to read the damn question. Everyone knows what it is. Alan says, online coaching, obviously not as ideal as normal coach, but when do you think this can be of value to someone at beginner or intermediate level? How would you suggest to make the most of this setup? I'd venture a guess that there are probably more weightlifters at this point, at least in the US, who are being coached remotely than who are being coached directly in person in gyms. And that's maybe... You have to kind of be a little bit vague about that, and maybe they're not getting direct coaching, but they're using programming. Yeah, programming from someone like from our site, for example. We have like 50,000 people using our stuff in some way or another. Programs. So, and pretty much every coach, every athlete in the universe is doing remote programming now. So... When this would be of value, I would say, is when your options of coaches remotely are better than your options for coaches locally. And so that's still, for a lot of people, it's either really difficult or impossible to find, an experienced, qualified coach that is within, reasonable travel distance to your home or business. And so, in a case like that, if you're really, really just getting started, it may be fine to go to someone who isn't particularly amazing at coaching, as long as they're not going to lead you astray too far. If they can, get you the basics, get you going, give you a place to train, then that's probably great. If you can, find a place to train, facility-wise, and there isn't a good coach available or no coach available, then obviously remote coaching is pretty much your only option. So, once you get to that point, of course, it's a matter of deciding who you're going to work with. And that can be the tricky one, because until you actually work with someone, I think it's really difficult to know whether or not it's going to work well. And part of that is that, obviously every athlete and every coach is going to tell you that working with them is going to go well. It's not like they're going to tell you, no, I do a really shitty job. I don't ever communicate with you. I don't respond to questions. And my program is the exact same for everybody, even though I tell you it's individual. And beyond that, you're going to have, just like in person, some coaches are going to work better with certain athletes than with other ones. And so there probably will be a little bit of experimentation there. The good thing is that, it's easy to experiment with different remote coaches because you don't have to be anywhere near them. You just have to have an internet connection. So, look into their credentials and look for someone who actually has coaching success, not just success as an athlete, because those are two different things. Mm-hmm. And a really good weightlifter can be a really good coach, but they're not necessarily good at coaching. And vice versa too. Someone who wasn't a great athlete can end up being a pretty successful coach, but make sure that you actually have seen that success in their coaching, not just listen to them saying, hey, a bad athlete can be a good coach, because they could just be bad at both. And look into, make sure you understand like what you're getting into. Make sure your expectations are reasonable. Is this person coaching half a dozen people, and is he or she going to give you legitimately an individualized program, give you individual attention, give you coaching feedback, adjust your program as needed, give you feedback on the lifts, all those things? Or are you one of 1,000 clients that this coach is sending programs to? And there are a couple people out there who are, claiming they're doing 1,000 individualized programs. And I mean, I'm just going to tell you right now, no, absolutely not. Those are not individualized programs. That's not impossible to do a legitimate good job individually coaching 1,000 people. So, make sure that you're getting what you pay for. If you want to pay $20 a month and be one of 1,000, that's pretty reasonable. If you are paying, $200 a month for an individual program and you're getting the same program as 1,000 other people, that's pretty unreasonable in my opinion. And then the final thing I would say to make the most of it is you really need to take the initiative in terms of communicating with your coach. Whether it's email, texting, sending videos, all those things, because that coach, if you expect them to be able to do a good job with you individually, you need to be giving them all that information. Did you miss some of those lifts? Did you make them all? Did they feel easy? Did they feel difficult? Send them videos. Oh, here, this is what these snatches looked like. They looked like shit. So that coach can actually give you feedback and can adjust your program. Like, oh man, those weights were way too heavy. That's not what I wanted them. They shouldn't have looked that hard. They shouldn't have felt that hard, or those are too easy, whatever the case is, because it is difficult. You have to understand that, coaching remotely is hard, because you don't have that ability to watch every single lift that your athlete is doing and kind of mentally make those notes and adjust the program. You have to really rely on that athlete to tell you all those things and to be as accurate as possible and honest as possible. And remember too that you are one athlete and that coach has probably many athletes they're working with. So you can't expect that coach to hunt you down and ask you every single day, hey, how'd your training go? How was this? How was this? That's really unreasonable to expect it to go that direction. So expect your coach to work with you and communicate with you, but you have to really be the one taking the initiative on that. Ursula, do you even do remote coaching? With like Derek and stuff.
Yes, I do what's called, I would call it semi-remote. Because I
you have to be within 50 miles? What does that mean?
No, you have to come see me. Like I won't. I think for a beginner, when they're beginners, I make them come see me more, because I need to make sure I'm straightening out all the technical issues. Before I can start putting away. I do something that would be more akin to remote for lifters that are at a higher level, because the technical issues aren't the bigger problem. It's it's refining technical issues, and I do a lot of that with exercise selection, and then filling in the holes, so correcting weaknesses, which I can do via programming, and program modification. But for beginners, I want to be able to see them every day to make sure we're addressing the day-to-day problems and not letting them develop bad habits early on. And then we move to something that looks more semi-remote. So, like I would be more open to something that's online or remote for somebody who is already fairly adept technically. And so when I assess people as to whether I'm going to take them into a program, if they need to be taught how to lift, I need to see them regularly to be able to do that. Or if they need a lot of technical work, I need to see them fairly regularly. And so I think that if you're learning, you need to have somebody there working with you. It's hard to learn by watching online. I have seen some people that have done a pretty good job with themselves. Like if they just have good kinesthetics or athletic, they may actually do a pretty good job. I think that's why like beginner seminars or taking a USAW course or taking a Catalyst Athletics course or taking something that is intended to teach you good technique by somebody who is equipped and who is, has a good background and reputation in the sport helps start you in the process. And maybe taking several of those types of courses so you get that introduction and feedback is helpful. And I've seen some people come in that are pretty good movers just doing that, and then they go back and work on their own, and they get these programs as beginners online, and then they get to a certain point where they need to progress from there, and they need something that's more individualized at that point. Once they've progressed to a point that just a general program without specifically addressing their issues isn't going to work for them anymore. I think that's when you really do need something more individualized at that point. But I'm not a huge fan, but I think when you don't have an option, because you live somewhere remote or there's just not a lot of coaches developed in your area yet, I think there's nothing wrong with finding coaches that are still developing if those coaches are, and you might be part of their trial and error process, but if they're making legitimate efforts at growing while you're growing, sometimes that's what really great foundations for athletes and coaches are built upon. And I've seen some really good coaches that have been developing in recent years that are developing great athletes. So sometimes you need to, take those chances and become part of a program that's developing, and you see the athletes grow and the coach grow and everything in that area of, a whole city, like in San Antonio with Steve Calvon. I was mentoring him, and he was going to not just what I was teaching him, but lots of other influences, and developed, a great program in San Antonio at 210, and has now is developing coaches himself, like DJ and lifters, and developed a whole program around that. So you have to give some coaches in the local area also maybe a chance to work with you. But I do think you should look into, like, who are their influences? Like, are they taking every educational opportunity to develop as well? And are they learning from legitimate coaches as well? Or are they just like this self-anointed, I took a course one weekend and now I know everything? That can be a little dangerous, because then you really are on a probably pretty big learning curve. So.
All right.
I mean, I think sometimes it's just you make the best of the not a great situation, and online coaching is one of those.
Yeah. When it's truly your only option, you just got to make it work.
Yeah.
It's better than just not doing weightlifting. That would be a stupid
I think that
choice.
you should take the opportunities that work in person with coaches as much as you can.
Of course.
And like I have people who would come down once a month, and then I would send them programming. They would send me videos, and that was the best we could do. And we made progress that way.
Yeah.
So that's what it's all about.
Yeah, it's all about progress.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Jordan says, I really struggle with getting under the bar with speed in the snatch. I'm a new lifter and understand that it takes time. Get it? But just wondered if there are specific drills that can help me to solve this problem. Sure there are, Jordan, and we will gladly list them for you now. First of all, before I talk about any drills, I would say make sure the rest of your snatch is being done properly. Because a lot of times people will say, they'll pick a really specific part of the lift and say, this is where my problem is. And it turns out that's not really the problem. That's just where they notice symptoms of the problem. So I'm not going to argue that you're slow under the bar. I totally believe that. Lots of people are. But it may not be that itself is where the problem is. It may be something much earlier in the lift, or related to your actual extension, your balance, things like that need to be fixed. So no matter how many drills you do to address the speed under the bar itself, it's not going to progress as much as it should because you haven't addressed the actual underlying problem. So just keep that in mind while we're talking about this. So if it's, I would kind of look at this in three parts, I guess. There would be the actual timing of the change of direction at the top. So, when you reach the peak of your extension and you stop trying to actually elevate the bar with the legs and hips, how quickly can you transition from that pull up into the pull under? So that's just a timing issue, is when you do that, how quickly you do that. Then there's what I would actually call the pull under. So literally pulling yourself down with your arms. That's that initial movement. And then there's the turnover. So that's when you're actually going from pulling down towards the bar to turning that bar over into that overhead position and punching up on it. And so you can train them all together, but they're kind of three distinct pieces of that motion. The tall snatch is one of my favorite exercises for the pull under in general, just because it does address that entire pull under and turnover in terms of looking at the mechanics of it and being able to focus on pulling that bar as close to your body as possible. Things should be so close you can smell it as it goes by your face, and then turning it over aggressively after that initial pull under, pulling those elbows up and out, then squeezing back so that bar stays right by your face, then punching straight up, over the back of your neck, versus kind of just falling down under it. And so if you can work with a little weight on that, you really have to, you develop that feel of actively pulling and turning over versus, pulling the bar up as hard as you can and then falling down and hoping that it lands right in the slot for you. So tall snatches, and then pretty much any snatch from a really high hang or block position. So that can be snatch from power position, snatch from the hip, snatch from mid-thigh, snatch from high blocks that are, above the knee to mid-thigh. Hell, I've seen people do block snatches from almost all the way up in the hip. So you can mess with any of that stuff, and the good thing about those is that not only will they allow you to kind of focus on that actual pull under and turnover like I was just talking about, but also that change of direction, that timing. And keep in mind too that how well you can change directions and pull under the bar does depend somewhat on how well you accelerated it in that second pull. So if you have a really wimpy second pull, it won't matter how aggressively you're trying to pull under that bar, because that bar just doesn't have that upward momentum that you really need, to have an adequate amount of time and space to get under it properly. Ursula, bail me out here.
Snatch from the blocks or something like
done.
that. Yeah. So that last thing you said, then doing something like mid-thigh snatch, hang from the mid-thigh, or hang from above the knee, or block, snatch off the blocks with the bars above the knee. That'll help you learn to generate a lot of speed in that second pull. You left out what exercise to do for that.
What's that?
You were just throwing exercises at them to generate speed in the second pull.
Yeah. Didn't you just say I left out one exercise?
Yeah, you left out what to do to generate speed in the second pull. You said hip snatch, but then you didn't give all the ones for generating speed in the second pull.
Oh, you mean when I said pretty much any snatch from a high hang or high block position?
Oh, I didn't hear you say hot. Sorry. I was writing stuff down. This is my point that I make to my students, why I provide them with a framework for our notes. Because if you're writing notes down, you're not listening. It just totally happened.
Imagine that. Not following your own advice.
I used to print out like the questions before the podcast, and now I just print them out like right when we get on the phone. So then when I'm reading the questions, I'm like jotting down all my notes, and then as I'm jotting them all down, like Greg is actually already saying them or has said them, and I'm like, fuck. Like he talked about stealing my thunder. Maybe you're just
unconsciously writing down what I'm saying.
Oh, shut up. This is not true because we use totally different terminology. I actually wrote down your tall snatches next to my word pull unders. So, yeah. One of the things I did in my Art of Coaching weightlifting class is we had a whiteboard, and we called it the question board. And so I let them go up there, and they wrote down all of their, questions about errors that people make in lifts and what to do to fix them. So I would give them the exercises that you can do, like we do on our podcast, to fix. But we did it in person, so we could do a demo of the exercise and why we picked that exercise. And then they could come back with questions like we don't have the ability to do on the podcast, or how we ask, well, we don't know if you're talking about this and this. Well, I could do that in person. And this was, the types of questions that I would get, like, what do I do to get faster into the bar? And, like all of these things that we're talking about, we can pull apart, because sometimes I didn't understand what they wrote on the board as what their problem was. But there are things, obviously, speed under the bar, and Greg pointed all these things out. The ability to have the bar flying fast will affect your ability to get under the bar. And he mentioned, how to fix that, which I obviously wasn't listening. Your speed dropping, right? So then we work on those exercises. He mentioned tall snatches. I call them pull unders. You can do those either flat-footed or from your toes. I learned both ways. Chad learned flat-footed. I learned from the toes, and I like both. Of course, if you do them from the toes, it's going to be a really active arm movement. If you do them flat-footed, you get to kind of cheat a little bit because you get to come up on your toes, which actually elevates the bar before you go pull yourself under. If you have, you have to remember also that the comfort and balance that you have under the bar might affect whether you move fast. So if you're not sure of your position and balance under the bar, you might actually just move slower because of the lack of confidence. So something as simple as a snatch balance for somebody who is not confident and like snatch balance plus overhead squat will help increase your confidence. So you have to recognize whether you're not moving fast because either your mobility isn't good or you're not comfortable under the bar. So if you're not already incorporating snatch balance plus overhead squat, you don't have the appropriate like 10% over your snatch balance. That might be an area that you're looking at. Direction change, which I think Greg also mentioned. Either muscle squat snatch, which is the no foot movement thing, because the bar is moving slow. So you have to move fast under the bar. It forces you, that exercise itself forces you to have a quicker direction change. I also use that hip muscle squat snatch to tighten up the trajectory along with direction change. Also could be, I'm sorry, talk about name dropping. I'm getting a call from Niku Vlad. Shut up, Greg.
That's right, folks. That's how famous Ursula is. Niku Vlad is calling her for help.
I hope I can help him. Shit.
You better now.
Shit. I sometimes look at that list and I'm just like, wow, it's weird. Like my list of missed calls. Because Alexander Karlovich one time called me.
Oh,
and I was like, well, Piros calls me all the time.
Of course he does. Well, I just had beers with him a week ago, so suck it.
Yeah, I mean, Piros is becoming less of a big deal for everybody at this point. He's been on my phone thing for a long time. But now, everybody spends time with him, so that's not like a bragging point for anybody anymore.
Oh, yeah.
Around Piros a lot.
You're still the winner.
Yeah, I still have like all of the selfies of him on my phone.
Ursula, take a picture of me.
Yeah, this. I told Greg this thing because he sends a phone call he put it on Instagram of the picture of when Piros was there. And my guys are like, why doesn't Piros come watch us train? I'm like, he doesn't need to come here. He's got other things to do. he'll come. I'll get him to come eventually. It's not, he's got to go watch other people right now. They're getting ready for Worlds. It's like, are you getting ready for Worlds? No. Okay. But we're in an executive board meeting. I told Greg this story, and I get this message on my phone because I sit across from him in the executive board meeting, and I get this message, and it's like, take a picture of me, and it's Puros. And I take a picture of him and I send it to him. Later he posted on Instagram. He gives me no photo cred. And so we're later that evening, we're me and him and Kakishvili, if you don't know who that is, we're hanging out, and there's a lake in the background of the restaurant that we're at. And I was like, Puros, take a picture of me with the lake in the background. And I go to look at my phone, and there's this giant selfie of his face on my phone. And I'm like, oh, there's a picture of me, and it's horrible quality. Like, anyways, I never posted the picture of me on the lake. One of these days, I'm going to post that picture of his selfie. I have lots of those. I remember Morgan did that to me too, at a Worlds one time. I'm like, take a picture of me. There's this giant picture of her nostrils.
Perfect.
Yeah, but she does that. She's known for that. She'll take pictures of herself.
So
anyway, did we
cover
get the
Jordan all the way?
I think we did. I think I got everything before Niku interrupted.
Jordan, just go faster.
Yeah, just
don't
get faster.
Overcomplicate it. There's your drill. Do a snatch and go really fast. Okay. Gwen says, I love listening to your podcast. Thanks, Gwen. We love you loving listening to our podcast. When working with a new lifter who has multiple areas to improve upon, which is every single new lifter ever, how do you determine which issue to attack first? Ursula, just start this one because I'm tired of starting it.
Well,
Don't jump in too quick though.
No, I look at the issue that I think like I'm going to get the most bang for my buck. So I don't deal with the smaller issues. I deal with the bigger issues first. So first of all, are they doing the fundamental movements? So I'm looking at bar path. Like, are they? So the first pull is setting you up for the second pull. So if I'm going from the ground, I'm going to address, are they setting up correctly? Are they putting themselves in the right position for the hang so that the second pull is correct? If they're not setting up correctly, if I'm going from the ground, then obviously that's where I'm going to start, because that's going to set them up for the hang position. Then I get to the hang position. If the hang position isn't correct, then that's going to set them up for a wrong hip position. So if I'm working from the bottom up, I'm going to start the analysis from the bottom up. If I'm starting at the hip, then I'm looking at, are they jumping, right? Because that's what's going to propel the bar. And then I would work my way down. Are they coming into the correct hang position? Are they making contact of their hip when they get back to the hang position? So I usually do a bottom up analysis if I'm working from the ground, and I would check the positions first. Then I would look at, like, where is the source of the force? Like, are they jumping? Like that, I'm using ground reaction force. So if they're not using the proper, if they're not jumping, then that's going to affect the whole lift. So if I'm looking at, are they using their arms too much? Well, are they using their arms too much because the bar's out of position, or are they using their arms too much because they're not generating force? So I have to determine which of those is the cause. So I don't want to sit there and yell at them to straighten their arms. If they're using their arms because they're not jumping, then I need to address that. But if they're using their arms because the bar is always in front and they're trying to pull the bar into the hip, then I need to address the position. So I'm going to look at position. I'm going to look at how they're generating force. And that's why we usually teach both of those things first, like force, using ground reaction force to make sure that we know how to get force from the ground to an implement. And then also working a lot on their positions initially will kind of take care of those bigger issues. So I'm always looking for the bigger problems first, either something in positions, which is going to affect trajectory of the bar, because we know that most lifts are missed in both the snatch and the clean because of pull trajectory. And then the second issue is the inability to actually get the bar high enough in a lift, which is lack of the ability to generate enough force or to get enough force to the implement.
Yeah, implement the force. Surprisingly enough,
does that even make sense?
I agree with what Ursula said. I would just say,
it's shocking.
To kind of simplify the process, You're going to look at things in the order they occur and in the order of their magnitude. So like just what she said, if it's a lift from the floor, you start with the position off the floor. You look at the pull before you look at the pull under. You look at, because things later in the lift are going to be affected by things earlier in the lift, right?
Sure.
If you start the lift from a bad position, the rest of the lift is going to be bad. If you start from a good position, but then by the time you get to the knee, your knees are straight and your shoulders are 18 inches in front of the bar, then you're going to have trouble the rest of the lift. So you kind of look at it that way. And then of course, like she said, you focus on fundamentals. So that's the magnitude thing, is the more fundamental the problem, the bigger the magnitude, the sooner you need to address it. So if something like a starting position is really bad, you don't need to be focused on something really, really minor like the exact hand and wrist position overhead, because the chances of them actually getting the bar into that overhead position are pretty small. I think the frustrating thing here is that when you see a new lifter, the whole time you're just thinking, oh my God, they're just doing every single thing wrong. This looks terrible. They're never going to get any better. Where do I start? It's really overwhelming. And one of the really difficult things about coaching is that a lot of times those lifters are very aware of all those problems, and you'll tell them one thing to focus on. They'll be like, what about A, B, C, D, E, F, G? And they'll go through the whole litany of problems. You're like, yes, I saw all those problems. You're right. Your snatch is terrible. We all know that, but you can't fix all those things at once. And so it's really your job to be disciplined and to kind of keep them focused on what you as the expert have determined is the most important thing to focus on at that point. You can't address 30 problems in every single lift. And you can remind them, listen, I'm telling you this thing because this is the most important thing to focus on right now. And I promise you that if you correct this, numbers 4, 5, and 6 on your list are going to get taken care of on their own. So you stop thinking through the entire lift and let me do that for you. And that's a good point too to make to these new lifters, is that your job is not to think about that stuff. Your job is to communicate to me what you feel and what you think, after a lift, and then basically do what I tell you need to do. So let me determine what you need to focus on during the next lift, because I can sort through what is most important, what is going to have, like Ursula said, the biggest bang for your buck, versus just saying, yeah, you're right, all those things were wrong, fix all of them right now.
Well, and when we teach in a certain order, the first thing we do is teach them to secure the bar overhead safely. So you want to make sure, obviously, that's there.
Yeah.
And then we teach them how to get the bar overhead without, hitting their forehead and tearing their shoulder out of socket, right? So, those are obviously two of the big things before we even start doing anything. And then we start teaching bar trajectory, like how to get the positions to get the bar overhead and move in a certain bar trajectory. Oh, my God. Can't believe that happened.
Who could have seen that? Could have seen that coming.
Yeah. Not Mark.
Nope.
And then my phone is dead, so I can't even stop it from ringing.
That doesn't even make sense. If your phone is dead, how is it ringing?
It really doesn't, because I don't know. It's really bizarre.
I think at this point you're just making shit up because you refuse to turn your phone off.
I know, like that story about.
You spend more time coming up with fucking nonsense fables about why your phone rings than you do just turning it up.
I wish I was that creative. No, the little. Oh my God, and then that's there too. Oh, I can hit that button. Maybe.
So that button works.
That's my Tyrannosaurus Rex excuse. I can't reach it. My arms are too short.
Oh my God.
I'm basically T-Rex. I have a saying that I say to people: stop showing me what you know and do what I say. Because I get that a lot of when I'm teaching or reteaching people. Like, they already want to do what they know to do, and it's wrong. And so I just wrote that down, so I decided I was going to say it. And I hate to keep bringing up my Art of Coaching Weightlifting, but we actually have a segment of the course that we didn't get to go through because we did it without going through it in the book, in the manual, but it's in the manual. That is a bottom-up analysis. And I actually go through, like, from the ground to the knee. As a coach, the questions you're asking yourself and what you're looking for in that movement. And then passing the knee, and then the knee to the hip, and then the hip up, and then pulling under. Like, what you're looking for and the questions you're asking yourself as you're watching each segment of that lift. Because we teach usually top down, but then when we do an analysis of the lift, when the lift is actually happening, we're doing that at bottom up in the full lift form.
Yeah.
Just saying.
All right.
Mark.
Let's get to Mark, because Ursula really loved and appreciated this question. Mark says, "Hey guys, thanks for putting on an amazing show. Hopefully Ursula's dog doesn't bark or phone rings during the answer to my question." Good fucking luck, Mark. I just love how this question was, the prelude to this question was the phone ringing and the dog
bus
barking.
Is coming right now. I'm not kidding. My son's about to.
Oh my God.
We do these on Fridays, and that's my trash day. I didn't make that up. Y'all can check out the Pflugerville fucking trash schedule, okay?
Hey, you know what? Why don't you remind them whose idea it was to do it on Friday?
It's the only day we have open, both of us.
Okay, so then quit fucking whining about it.
Exactly when trash comes.
The trash is coming. It's coming from your side of the phone here. I've been having trouble with beginning to shrug my shoulders before I've completed my leg extensions. I feel that it's impeding the power I should be generating from full hip extension and can identify it on video review.
Shrug.
Can you recommend any drills to help correct this? Thank you, and don't let Greg talk his way out of doing future episodes. She's trying, Mark, but I just can't promise anything. I feel like we're on a really rapid downhill slide into an episode that is just 60 minutes of a ringing phone and a barking dog. And then Ursula just like spouting a string of fucking stories and excuses about those two things.
And cackling.
That's episode 50. And then it's just gonna go dark. Radio silence after that.
You're killing me.
All right.
We both quit today, by the way. I have evidence.
We both what?
We both quit today.
Oh yeah. we both retired and then reinstated ourselves.
Then we called, and then the phones dropped us, and then it was a close call.
Okay, well, Ursula, you need to start this question because you were mean to Mark.
I'm busy.
Nope. Do it.
No, because I hate the word shrug. I like torso extension.
The word shrug.
Elevation of the torso.
Yeah, but that's not what a shrug is.
It's like a bodybuilding shrug. But that's what people do. They like put their shoulders to the front of their ears. And the top of the pull, well, why would you begin to shrug before you complete your leg extension? If the power is coming from the ground, and you should be driving from the ground. If you derive the source of
Ursula,
force from the ground.
Ursula, can you read? He knows that's wrong. He's asking how to fucking correct it. Help the guy out.
Do it. No.
Or you know what? I'm going to answer this question because you don't even know what the question is.
I do know what the question is.
Really?
The way
Prove
you
it.
fix it is that you jump first. You jump through the ground, and then you elevate your torso.
Mark, I'm just apologizing for Ursula right now. I'm sorry you had to go through this.
I hate word shrug.
Yeah, we get it. This isn't about you. This is about Mark and his desire to be better at weightlifting.
He's talking shit about my dog.
He's not talking shit about your dog. He's talking shit about you.
Oh, well, that's
not the dog's fault. Dogs barks. Or bark. You need to control it.
Dogs barks.
Oh, you got me all flustered. Now I can't talk.
Okay, now Greg is having the rant about my... I feel that it's impeding my power. Mark, that's because it is.
Yes, he knows that. Quit telling him all the shit he already knows and tell him how to fix it.
Okay, so here's what you do. You, at your hip, you hold the bar and you jump. And then you do a few hops, like you jump, 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 and then you jump and you receive the bar. And then you do that a few times. Then you go down to mid-knee and you stand back to your jump position. You do the same thing. Go down to your mid-knee, so you hang, come back to your hip and jump. You go back to your mid-knee, you come back to your hip and jump, and then you go back to your mid-knee, you come back to your hip, and you do a snatch. So then you're like doing the same thing so that you can feel your legs working in the exercise. You can also do snatch pull jumps from the ground. So you do a snatch pull and you jump off the ground, snatch pull. I used to do those with angel spass off, actually as an exercise, as opposed to doing back squat jumps. Mm-hmm. Or you can do like quarter back squat jumps. You have to learn how to feel how the jump is utilized. And then you have to incorporate that into the movement so that becomes the prime mover of the bar. And so you have to learn how to generate force to the ground and use that. So basically you need to learn how to jump and then use the jump as the source of the power and learn to then move from the jump as the source of power force, and then use the torso extension and coming up onto the toes as forces that add to that, as opposed to the primary sources of generating power or force.
Now, Ursula, was that so hard? You could have just said that right at the beginning, and then I wouldn't have had to yell at you and make myself feel bad.
Yeah, like you really feel bad.
You're right. I didn't fucking feel a thing.
No, you don't at all.
What kind of weight would you use for those snatch pull jumps?
About 80%, 75 to 80%
of your best snatch. Doubles, triples, singles.
Triples, no more than
sets
that.
of 20. Okay, Mark, those are all great suggestions. The only thing I would add to that is trying. Actually, almost basically the opposite of a pull jump would be a slow pull. And so this isn't, you wouldn't replace your regular pulls with this. You could still do the pull jumps alongside this, but a slow pull would be exactly what it sounds like. You're essentially doing a nice controlled speed all the way up until you get basically to the hip. And so you can really feel, maintaining a tight back, a tight trunk, loose arms, basically just, as Tim Swords once said, you're towing the bar versus pulling the bar with the arms. And that should help you kind of keep those arms relaxed, the back tight, and feel that you're generating that force with the legs and hips. And when you can kind of get that sequencing down a little more comfortably, you can start obviously adding speed back into those pulls. You can do a combination of a slow pull plus a regular speed pull. Hell, do a slow pull plus a pull jump and be done with it. And then doing segment lifts or like a pause snatch. So pausing at mid-thigh for 2 seconds and then completing the lift after that so that you get into that position without having prematurely shrugged your shoulders or whatever it is you're doing weird. And then, of course, returning to the floor, doing a regular snatch and seeing if you can kind of basically reprogram your brain to have that discipline and stay relaxed and not get overly tense early on in the lift. We'll just listen to Ursula's phone here for a second.
I'm trying to cover the microphone.
I thought you said you could turn it off.
I can't turn off the thing. I was trying to cover the microphone so you didn't have to hear the message.
Oh my God.
We're done.
Yes, we fucking stumbled through that one. Fucking hell.
Well, considering the way it started with me on another phone call and our phone, your router thingamajiggy not working. Greg's
honestly, I genuinely don't know why anyone fucking
BFE.
listens to this at this point.
I don't either. Well, it's real. It's really unprofessional.
Yeah. Well, it is unprofessional.
It is.
We are not professional podcasters.
No, we are not. We're not. We know.
So,
never said we were. We did plan on it.
If someone wants to start giving us like $10,000 a month for it, we'll get a studio. Until then, it's just going to be me yelling at Ursula for being so unprofessional.
I think nobody minds you yelling at me. Somebody should probably do it. There's no one yelling at me adequately in my life.
Professional.
Yeah. My mom stopped doing it at like 18, and now I've just been 30 years.
She stopped too soon.
Yeah, obviously.
You weren't. It's like taking your braces off too soon. Your shit just goes right back to being all fucked up.
Yeah, and there's no retainer. Like, you throw that shit away at Whataburger. That really happened to me.
Yeah, well, it's happened to pretty much anyone with a retainer at some point. Okay. Guys, I'm not even going to ask you to go post a review about this show because I feel like they'd all be one star at this point.
Good today.
Please don't go review this show because I'm afraid of what you'll say. Maybe give us another chance in about 2 weeks or so. See if...
Yeah, because we're going to be at Worlds. What are we going to do about that? We have had no discussion on that.
I don't care. Let's just quit. We'll maybe do it again later.
No.
Huh?
Is this episode 36?
Yeah.
That sounds like we made
plenty.
it like 3 years or something. It's not true.
It feels like 100. It feels like I've been doing this podcast for more years than I've been alive.
It's not true.
No, that's exactly what it feels like. You don't know how it feels.
No, I don't know your feelings.
All right,
don't
guys.
invalidate my feelings.
We may or may not put another one of these out in 2 weeks. You'll just have to wait and see. Huh?
I love you, Greg.
Don't lie to me. All right, guys. Seriously, though, we may or may not be back. I hope you enjoyed this one.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens.